Okay, let's get into it real quick. Attorney Walter Hnot, this video is specifically about how the government is starting to relook at mental impairments and their redesign of the future of adjudications, both for Social Security benefits, but also how much Medicaid is going to be paying for. And what I'm hearing from the political side is that a lot of the politicians are not happy with how many people now have mental impairments, how many people likely have mental impairments that have been left out statistically from what the government's using currently. And then on top of that, they're looking at how much is actually spent on mental impairments going forward. Now, some of you will say, well, some impairments you cannot see, some disabilities you cannot see. I agree 100%. Here's the kicker. Okay. It's the money problem. It is estimated that 450 to 500 billion for 2024 were spent on global mental health market. Okay. So bottom line is projected growth by 2030, that will be 650 to 700 billion dollars by 2030. For just the US mental health market in 2024, it was estimated between 100 and 120 billion were spent. Now, let's take a moment here and go backwards in time. If we go all the way back to 2019 via the Commonwealth Fund survey, they found 58 billion in 2018 was spent on mental health care, and 17 billion was spent on substance use care. So we're dealing with, just to solidify very quickly exactly what it is, $1 trillion marketplace, $1 trillion healthcare marketplace. You got Medicaid, Medicare, private health insurance. You got all the different legal situations interacting with that, like SSDI benefits, workers' comp benefits, LTD benefits, short-term disability insurance benefits. Now, granted, they are coming out with newer types of medical treatment for mental impairments. You have all kinds of things. You have devices that will sync with your phone, and you'll put them on your head, and it's a band, and it uses vibrations and sound to try and calm a person down. And to be fair, I know some people who use them. And I know some people who have devices that they put on their head, which measures their brain activity. And they're getting to the point now where they can actually sync it with their phone and deliver the data to their doctors. I made a video a couple of days ago where some people were fully in agreement that this is where everything is going. And some people said, absolutely not. This is all fear. There's no way any of this will happen. No way, no how. The video, just to clarify, was about how the SSA was using new devices and looking at new devices that could be used to assist with figuring out how severe somebody's impairments are. A lot of people, they realize that if you have an Apple Watch, it can read some cardiovascular functions. But they didn't realize that there's special shoes that can read what your ambulation is like, what your gait is like, what happens when you do certain ranges of motion. There are headbands that you wear that can assess brain waves, that can do all kinds of things. A lot of people didn't realize that. Now they do. With that said, people did not like that could be used as a standard where the SSA sends you a package and says, hey, are you still disabled? We're going to send you this equipment. You're going to put it on, and it will tell us whether or not you are still severely impaired. They hated that. Some of them, actually, some of the people liked it. It was a very small percentage, but most of the people absolutely hated it because it puts them at this weird disadvantage where the computer system will define how severe they are. And everybody, including myself, is worried about the same thing. The severity levels, all right, so let's see, not severe, extremely severe. And you to be found disabled have to be found severely impaired, right? Well, just as I do, the government over time is just going to keep raising that severity requirement until it's basically just licking the bottom of extreme, right? It's just right up there. So the problem I'm seeing is that people don't really know what the new technologies are and why the government is so interested in them. However, I would like to bring something to your attention here, which is that in the mental health care market, there is a little bit of a problem, and that's that they don't really have cures. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these ideas of essentially cures that, they did at a 2006 psychiatry general, conference. Let's see what they had to say. Okay, here we go. Can psychiatry cure?
How many patients have you been able to cure so far?
I would say one.
How many people have I cured? Well,
There are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
Do you have any? You asked me about the issue about how many people I've cured. I don't know that any of us are ever completely cured of anything.
I have not been able to cure many patients.
I have cured none of my patients.
Okay, so why is this happening? Why do we spend this much money? Hundreds and hundreds. You get to basically, you do 10 years going forward, you're over $1 trillion spent on mental health care. Okay. So the problem these politicians are looking at is that we have a lot of people in this country who have mental impairments. Now, statistically, when you look at it, the amount of people with mental impairments is actually not really going up, which I found to be fraudulent as a statistic, because I know of the people I work with and the amount of people available that there is a massive amount of people who have mental impairments compared to back in the day. And I'm looking for my stats here. Hold on. I had a whole thing on them and I just lost it real quick. Hold on, right here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so let's take a look at this real quick right here. Mental health by the numbers. Okay, this is from NAMI.org. Let's go through some of the basics here, okay? And some of these will shock you. Some of these probably won't. 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year. Okay, so you go sit at a dinner table with, a family. 1 in 5 of them has mental impairments. 1 in 20 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness each year. Okay, so they're having a difficult time doing basic functional tasks. So you go into a gym, right? One of those people is having serious mental illness issues. 1 in 6 U.S. youth aged 16 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14 and 75% by age 24. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 14. Okay. 22.8% of U.S. adults experienced mental illness in 2021. Totaling 57.8 million people. This represents 1 in 5 adults. 5.5 of U.S. adults experienced serious mental illness in 2021. That's 14.1 million people. This represents 1 in 20 adults. Okay. 16.5% of U.S. youth aged 16 to 17 experienced a mental health disorder in 2016. That's 7.7 million people. 7.6% of U.S. adults experience a co-occurring substance use disorder and mental illness in 2021, which is 19.4 million people. So let's talk about this. Annual prevalence of mental illness among U.S. adults by demographic group. Non-Hispanic Asian, 16.4%. Non-Hispanic Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, 18.1%. Non-Hispanic Black or African American, 21.4%. Hispanic or Latino, 20.7%. Non-Hispanic White, 23.9%. Non-Hispanic American Indian or Alaskan Native, 26.6%. Non-Hispanic Mixed Multiracial, 34.9%. Lesbian, gay, or bisexual, 50.2%. So in this group, the top 3 groups that have the most difficulty with mental impairments, the most significant by far, which is more than double for most, is the lesbian, gay, and bisexual group. Then followed by non-Hispanic mixed multiracial, right? And then you've got basically non-Hispanic American Indian or Alaskan Native. And then you go to the 4th, which is basically whites. Okay. Those are the groups that experience, based on the evidence that they provide and the treatment that they're getting, statistical information showing that they have the most mental illness. Now, you will get different arguments from different parties. The Republicans on the right side will say, well, we're having a lot of people create humans that normally those humans wouldn't be able to go ahead and exist in the wild. And so we just keep procreating problems, right? That's the Republican argument usually. Then you have the Democratic argument. The Democratic argument is we just need to find more healthcare workers for the rising amount of people that have mental health problems. What we don't seem to be addressing, though, is the fact that we have not held the mental health medical field to the lofty height of actually finding true cures for people who have these issues. Now, some of you will say there are mental impairments that can never be cured. And I don't agree with that. I think every single mental impairment, no matter which one you bring up over a 100-year period, will be cured. It's just we're going to have technology that's going to be able to modify whatever you're feeling to make you feel something else. Now, some of you will say that that is the mark of the beast. Some of you will say that basically that removes your humanity. But to be fair, a lot of you probably do not realize the severity of mental impairment that the SSA is mostly looking for nowadays. They're looking for people who are nearly a shut-in, nearly having to basically have an inability to communicate with others, people who have to spend some time inpatient at a mental facility, people who basically are allowed to go and see their mental health provider, once a month, once every 2 weeks, because they need that much assistance. Now, you'll get people who were found disabled, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and they'll be like, well, I was found disabled and I only had to go see a mental doctor 3 times. But as we all know, we don't listen to those individuals when it comes to what they think the standard is, because they don't know the standard anymore. They were found disabled when being found disabled was very, very easy. In fact, it caused an industry-wide collapse as a result of how many people who weren't really disabled were found disabled at the severity requirements of that time. It was so many people that the system had to massively clamp down around 2012, 2013, and 2014, which then caused some mega disability law firms to have to shutter their doors because they were massively in debt because the SSA was no longer mass approving people. Go look up the Binder and Binder legal story. Go look up how they couldn't afford their ads, all that stuff. It is a really good study. Now, with that said, I need you to understand that when we look at this entire situation, we need to be asking ourselves, why are there not more cures? Because, if you want to blame the people who have the mental impairments for having the mental impairments, you're going to get nowhere real fast. Because there's literally no way for a person with a mental impairment to create the medical doctorate level information they need to get out of the hole that they're in. Now, some people will argue that mental impairments are faked by some people. That is correct, but it is not as rampant as everybody likes to claim it is. As some people will argue, which is me, I will argue this, that a significant amount of the anxiety and depression caused by our current group of mentally impaired people has to do with a couple of basic items. One, the US dollar has massively devalued. 2, they have less of the US dollars than they used to. 3, they don't have secured housing. When you do that to a human being, when you take away their ability to have utilities, 4 walls and a roof, some spending money to buy food, some spending money to buy a toothbrush, when you do that to a human being, you will, over enough years, no matter what, consistently cause somebody to live in a situation where they are fearing where, when, who, what, because they don't know when they're going to be stuck going somewhere else. So as a result, my belief is that the greatest creator of mental impairment in the United States is the result of our politicians spending way too much of our money on other countries and other immigrants and not on our American citizens. And number 2, that our financial system is set up to not get employees to be able to earn future spots with more money. They try and get a job, they get a job, they get stuck in the job, they never really go anywhere, they never get an increase. You'll hear people, boomers and prior lived in the generation where you could work your way up. That shit doesn't exist anymore for most people. It doesn't exist anymore. Now, here's the thing. You may have noticed that a lot of places out there are offering jobs, and then those jobs never get filled because they weren't actually offering those jobs. Because if they say that they have jobs open, they can sometimes and usually get government-backed tax write-offs. And so as a result, they get to write off, and they call it different things with different whatever, but they get to write off a certain amount because they said they're looking for these types of individuals for these types of jobs. Sadly, you probably have noticed that a lot of people younger than me, in their 20s, in their early 30s, in their mid 30s, whatever, a lot of those people are not able to find jobs nowadays. Now, if you compound that with the future capability of artificial intelligence and robots, we are going to have entire generations of humans being born that are not going to be able to find jobs, which means, to be very, very, very direct here, no FICA taxes are going to be paid to uphold and continue paying out disability benefits, retirement benefits, widows benefits, disabled adult child benefits, on and on. So the main problem that we have to fix is we have to find a way to get FICA taxes paid so that people can still get their Social Security benefits. But how do we do that when such a massive amount of newly birthed people that reach working age can't work because they have mental impairments? All right. I guess what I would like to know, and we don't have a perfect way to figure this out because statistically every 20 years it's like another generation, and in those every 20 years that we have with that new generation, it's a situation where the world is a different place. So we don't have perfect statistics on this. But what I would like to know, okay, is if our dollar was worth significantly more, you could spend less of it to buy more stuff that you need, right? And if we had housing that was really cheap and a lot of young people were able to buy a house, build a house, buy a piece of land, build a house on it, whatever, would we have less anxiety and depression? Well, I know this. We have studied wild animals when it comes to the ratio of how many animals are being born from the prey and how many animals are being born by those that eat the prey, the predators. And what we've realized is that you have consistently a line where the bunny will go ahead and make a lot of babies. But then when a bunch of those babies get eaten by the increasing line of available predators, because there's more food to be eaten, then all of a sudden the bunnies start producing fewer babies. Because if they have fewer babies, they have more time to protect that smaller group. And they're also going through PTSD because they're thinking, if I have more babies, they're just going to get eaten anyways. So what we have is a showing from the basic nature as to why humans aren't producing as many children as they used to. The problem now is we have a lot of young people who are having a lot of kids that are not producing high-paying, high levels of income with FICA taxes paid jobs. We have a lot of other people who have achieved higher level jobs that are too busy trying to earn money to have the ability to buy a house because they can't afford the house like the prior generations did. So if you took like a boomer and gave them, let's say 75% success rate, and then you took a modern millennial and gave them 75% success rate, the boomer would be vastly more, financially, everything successful. They'd own lots of rental properties. They would, achieve all kinds of things in their field. They would have kids and be able to afford their college, all that stuff. You take millennials, most of them can't afford a house, and their student loans are more than your benefits. My student loans are $1,800 something a month. So, a lot of you, I'm curious for the people that are in here, how many of you, I'm just wondering, how many of you receive each month a Social Security check less than I forget exactly what it is, but it's like $1,850-ish, somewhere around there. How many of you receive a Social Security check that you paid into, many of you your entire life, that is less than what I have to pay in student loans each month? And I bet it's going to be a considerable amount of you. So, I mean, obviously all the SSI people, for sure. There's no doubt about it. The SSI people, it is what it is. So here's how. I just saw a thing from Mike Donovan. He said, how can rabbits control how many babies they have? It's because humans can control it because they have a brain. That's why they have the capacity to go ahead and, alter how much they're doing something that would control babies. And also, let's just be honest, if you have higher predators, one of them, the mom or the dad, is going to get eaten at some point, which is going to decrease the amount of babies that are had in total. So the point that I'm getting at with this is, I see Rude Rabbit there. You should go see it. They did a whole article on these, they're like these snow bunnies that basically, what their experience was when measuring essentially their capacity to have more children. And as the predators increased, they'd have fewer children. But then when the predators decreased, they still kept having fewer children. It wasn't like an equivalent upward swoosh, which I thought was interesting. I thought it was very interesting. And to be honest with you, I saw a lot of commonalities between my people, the Jewish people, and their faith and their background with having kids as a comparison to what happened with Germany in World War II. That was PTSD, longstanding, how do we survive, yada, yada. So, I mean, there's the same kind of mental identity there. So I guess from my perspective, and I see Elizabeth B said my SSDI is 1080. I mean, yeah, bottom line is I pay like about $800 more than that, what you get to survive on each month just for student loans. So, if you're ever wondering, like, why do all these millennial types, and I'm on the very far end of millennial, and some charts I'm not even on it, but if you're ever wondering why they're sitting back going, like, I can't afford my student loans. Now, granted, I didn't just have a college education. I had the master's and the doctorate and then some like postdoctorate, yada, yada stuff with it. So the point is with that whole spiel, my point with it is, a lot of people who get highly educated to assist you, your doctors that you go to, the lawyers that you hire, stuff like that, they can't afford, what the boomers could afford. If I was in boomer time frame, oh man, I would have had 50, 50 50 rental homes by now. I would have been doing very, very well. Now, the thing that would have hurt me though, and which would have reduced the amount of houses I would have had, is that the knowledge base of how to be successful did not exist in the 50s. It didn't, except for some very few families. So remember, 1950s, we didn't have traditional laptops or computers, and we didn't have the internet. So like all the people that are out there like telling you how to be successful, they didn't have access to that. It's just the rich families that knew how to do it to make it happen. And I'll be fair with you. In my Juris Doctorate, they never taught me how to actually make and or complete a fee petition. Where you like write out your hours, write out how much you should be paid, all that, and do the basic math. They never taught me any of that. Like the basic fundamental things that they needed to teach me to go ahead and start a law firm, they didn't teach me. I learned it because I worked at 2 law firms before I started my law firm. But, bottom line is law school didn't teach me what I needed, which brings me to my next point, which is that our traditional academia model doesn't teach people how to make money. It teaches them how to be good employees that pay FICA taxes. That's what it does. And the very few are able to go out and start companies. And then an even smaller percentage from there go out and make lots and lots of money. My point when I tie this all back to Medicaid is that I'm hearing when it comes to Medicaid, there's some concern when it comes to the amount of people having to be paid for this mental treatment and review. Now, let's take it as if we went from the Joseph Biden, President Biden background. If he had put those tens and tens of millions of immigrants onto SSI, which is what the overall goal was, right? Then that would have meant that you, the Social Security recipients who wanted treatment going to those doctors that Medicaid would provide, wouldn't be able to see those doctors for, could be a year at a time, could be a year and a half at a time, etc. So if we went that model, you'd be seeing the doctors even less because there wouldn't be enough doctors to be present to work on you, because the amount of people would have tens of millions increased, which means that they wouldn't have enough doctors to treat all the citizens and newly ready to be minted future citizens. Now we look at the Trump side, the Republican side, because, I'm an independent. I kind of give you guys both sides with this stuff. Problem with basically the Trump side is that Republicans just look at it and they go, these people must be fakers. These people must not be that bad. These people don't need that much treatment. These people just need different medication, yada, yada. What is going to help the Republican side is that they do have a lot of new medications coming out, which are essentially changing the landscape of mental impairments going forward. They have new, pills that are being used. They have new, I have it over here too. They have an entire list of different machines that are being used now. Hold on, let me get it real quick. I'll get it for you. Hold on, it's right here. Hold on, let me find it. Yeah, okay, so they got, some of these are ones that they've been using for a while, like transcranial magnetic stimulation, the TMS, electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. They got tons and tons of machines that people are basically using, to assist. But what's changing the marketplace of all this is that they're taking these things and making them very small and very Bluetooth and connecting with your phone or cellular and going straight up to the cloud. And now all of a sudden, you don't have to go to a special doctor's office just to get them. They can mail it to you. You can put it on. You can wear it for a month. And then they've got tons of data as to where you're at and what can be used to help you get better. So my point here with this, just to kind of explain what's happening, I think in the future, the argument that there will be more Bluetooth devices used by workers' comp, LTD, short-term disability benefits, SSDI benefits, SSI benefits. There will be more health insurance, life insurance. All of those will be used. Well, they'll send you a package and you'll put the package on, you'll wear the device, and it will directly link with your phone and tell you exactly where you're at. And I want to tell you, now some of you are going to say, well, that's BS. And some of you will hate me for saying this. I don't support it. I'm not the one sitting there going, hey, can we make a magical device that goes on your head that basically reads brainwaves so that we can see how severely impaired somebody is that might have depression? I'm not the one pushing that, okay? It's going to happen no matter. It's technically it's already happened. There's like 3 companies that make that device that are like mass produced, sponsored, and paid. They pay big bucks just to put their name out there on Google. The point I'm getting at with this is that the government is spending a lot of money on mental health, and there's no cure for mental health. Yeah, they have some new medications that are doing well. Yeah, they got this, they got that. But they're not at the point where they can say PTSD, no problem. Depression, no problem. Multiple personality disorder, no problem. Schizoaffective disorder, no problem. Schizophrenia, no problem. Panic attacks, no problem. We're nowhere near that. And what's upsetting to these politicians on the right, it's the Republicans who are trying to find solutions. You know what I've noticed too, and this is a broad comment. You know how like women will want to talk about something and they don't want you to give them a solution, but they just want to talk about it and go through the emotions of it. That's kind of like your Democrats. And then on the other side of the guys who are constantly like, this is the solution, just get it done. Go, go, go. Hit it. Quick. Just get it done. Why isn't it done yet? That's the Republicans. You have we want to talk about the emotional landscape of it and feel better at the end of it. And why aren't we just fixing it? Get it done. We need it off our plates. Those are like our 2 groups. And somewhere in the middle are the independents who are like, we need a cure for mental impairments. We do. We don't have one. We have people getting a little better here and there. But let me ask you this, okay? And I think this is an important question, and maybe you don't like it. Maybe you don't like it, okay? But here's the deal, okay? How many of you know somebody with mental impairment? Now, I get to cheat because I'm America's most viewed, subscribed to, and clicked on disability attorney. Lots of people hire me to represent them before the Social Security Administration, and a whole bunch of them have mental impairments. So I get to cheat on that one and say, I know a whole lot of people, right? Because I'm in the business of working with people that have mental impairments. Okay, but you, right? How many people do you know any who have mental impairments? Okay. Do you know any that have mental impairments? When you talk to them, are they ever on a strategic path towards a cure? And the correct answer is, for every single claimant that I work with, no, they are never on a strategic path for a cure. So when people talk about like, hey, they keep giving me this medication because of my heart condition or my blood sugar condition or my, respiratory condition, whatever. When people say they're giving me this medication so I don't have as much symptoms and I'm doing pretty well as a result of it. And then everybody else goes, well, yeah, big pharma's just keeping you on the hook. They're just treating the symptoms. So you have to keep buying their thing, right? Keep buying the snake oil that makes you feel good. Although some of those pills obviously do work. Why don't we look at mental health and hold big pharma and hold the physicians, psychologists, psychiatrists, behavioralists? Why don't we hold them to a higher standard? Because the weird thing is, y'all are aware big pharma is ripping you off when it comes to your physical impairments. But you're not, many of you, aware that they are ripping you off, and people are blind to it, for the mental impairments. And I think the problem that I see here that upsets me about it is that I really do think America is this unique little magical zone of land. And we have this idea, right? We're not communism. We're not socialism, although Social Security is a version of socialism. Okay. And people argue it's super socialism. Some will argue it's not socialism, but it's its own little version of socialism. Okay. We're a republic. And the whole idea of the republic is to essentially let people create things and then profit off of them. And the idea is that they will profit off of them and better society as a result of it. Now, we have great examples of people going out and starting nonprofits and doing these amazing things. And wow, that's incredible. And then we have rich people who do nothing for the people and they just do their own thing and it is what it is. Sometimes they do harm, right? Sometimes they create entire illegal rings and do illegal things and steal and do all these terrible things, right? We just saw that, right? 14.6 billion in healthcare fraud, including a lot of Medicare fraud. That was mostly Medicare fraud, and that was just happening over the past 2 years. Well, technically, let me rephrase that. We know it was happening at the levels it was over the past 2 years because investigations were started, but they weren't really winding up. Then we got Elon in there, and then all of a sudden, everybody got real smart about where all these problems were. You can also see, I'm not going to go into this because I don't want to walk out my door and not make it back. You can also see, if you want to take a moment, I'm not going to create any search terms on this, but if you look up certain pharmaceutical companies that were making products that tried to sell directly before Trump got elected in fear of his election, you will notice that some of them then had to self-report problems that they noticed related to fraud that their own companies committed. The point that I'm getting at with all this, so that you understand why I'm frustrated, is that we don't hold our medical healthcare providers and the pharmaceutical companies that have deals with them to a heightened standard of finding a cure. And if we don't start doing that, then the Republicans are going to punish you by starting to cut back funding because it costs so much to keep treating people over and over and over without a cure rate. The Democrats keep paying the bill until the money runs out, and now their method actually worked. The Democrats' method of spending without any real boundaries, it worked. It worked. And the Republicans do some of that too. The Trump party does some of that because he's not a true Republican. He's like this middle right thing. But the Democrats, they would just spend money and keep printing. And now we've run out of space. We can't print money anymore. We can't basically devalue the dollar anymore. Moody's has just downgraded the United States' ability to have a full, amazing rating. They just dumped us down one. They just knocked us down. So my point to you is, just so you understand it, so you have a full understanding of what's going on. By the way, my Stanley Cup 09, let me put a little heart on there. Thank you for the $1.99 donation. That's absolutely amazing. Super, super amazing. Thank you. That's awesome. So my whole point with this, just so you structurally understand what I'm getting at, okay, is that at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves why we don't have a cure for depression. And some of you think that's ridiculous. How ridiculous? Why would you say we're not going to have a cure for depression? Depression is just always going to be there. You get it? It never goes away. You just always got it. You never lose it. It'll always be with you. It's always there. It's like a virus we can't cure. We can cure it. We can cure anxiety. We even potentially have the CRISPR-related program abilities to modify DNA to increase the intellectual quotient of a person who has an IQ of, let's say, 60. We even have that. Now, some of you will say, I don't want them to modify me. I don't want them to modify me. The weird thing about it is, people that are super bright, hyper bright, right? When they get sick and they lose that extra cognitive functioning, that like higher level stuff, they can do instant math problems. They can figure anything out really quickly. They can do anything they want. And then boom, 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 they're through it. They can just see the answer in their brain. When they lose that, it is shocking to them. But what's not shocking is somebody who never had that higher level ability. The brain could never get up to that next. They couldn't climb those extra couple of rungs. It couldn't get up there. It couldn't see over the ledge. I think one of the most important things that we have to understand is that if we as humans want to cure what we are spending over $100 billion on each year in America, $500 billion as the planet Earth spins for everybody else, including us. We have to start demanding cures. And one thing that I think is really interesting is that in this video, when they talk about the, they've never cured anybody, they maybe cured one person, they're laughing. Let me show you again. Let me just one real quick. I just want to show you again. They're laughing because they know that this is their micro fraud. There's no cure. I don't think anybody could be cured. How could anybody be cured from this? Right? They're laughing because they know
the medications are in fact toxic.
Can it cure patients? Right here.
How many patients have you been able to cure so far?
I would say one.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
Yeah. The idea of you asked me about the issue about how many people I've cured. I don't know that any of us are ever completely cured of anything.
I have not been able to cure many patients.
I have cured none of my patients.
Okay. I then would like to ask one final question of you, and I think it's a serious one, and I would like you to take it very seriously, and I don't want you to just throw it off. I want you to take a moment. Let's relax for a moment. Let's take 2-3 seconds. Just relax. Why were we quick to realize that pharmaceutical companies were abusing the sale of narcotic and non-narcotic drugs as cures to people and keeping them having to buy it every week, every month, every 60 days, every 3 months, have to buy that medicine? It became a multi-trillion-dollar entity. Why did we realize this with people with physical impairments? And why did we never pay attention to those with mental impairments? Think about it. And I believe it's because we have at this time gone ahead and devalued people in our minds that have mental impairments. And when we devalue them because they have mental impairments, we try to defend them less. We try to help them less. We try to see less of them in our heads, in front of us, interacting with us. And that is why I believe we have been blind to this mental industry not finding cures. It's because inherently inside us, we tend to ignore those people with mental impairments and devalue them as human beings. If you look at war and you see one side is trying to make fun of another side, they're trying to devalue your belief in their human side, the humanistic qualities that make that other side who they are. We see it in war. It's propaganda, right? Right. So if we're doing propaganda against Russia, we'll say this about the Russians. If Russia's saying propaganda about the US, they'll dehumanize us by saying certain types of propaganda. It is my belief that we use propaganda in the United States to devalue people who have mental impairments to the point in which we do not question the medical treatment that they're receiving, to the point where nobody asks why there are no cures for the fields of psychiatry, psychology, behavioralists, mental, master's level therapists, etc. And that's a sad thing. And it's a pathetic thing. And we should all, to some degree, be ashamed of ourselves. But at the same time, we got to ask ourselves, why did we ignore them? We were just too busy. Maybe we just like to see people that are less than us. Maybe we like to feel better. Maybe it's a little bit of ego. But if we don't actually start paying attention to this, I can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be a hearing in front of the House and the Senate about how much is being, I know it's definitive. They do a hearing on it. They do a hearing on how much Social Security is spending, how much Medicare is spending, how much Medicaid is spending. They do it. I can promise you they will do a hearing on this. And with the current political alignment that we have, it is my belief that they are going to start cutting away the options that people have for mental health care treatment, as opposed to trying to find why we don't actually have cures. Princess Diana, thank you for the $2 donation. That's absolutely awesome. She's got the little number 2 crown, which is awesome. Very cool. She's also been a member for a really long time. She's, I think, our second longest member out of everybody. I think the first one goes to Leanne, but I think second would be our royalty, Madame Diana, which is very, very important. So with that said, there's also a donation from Danny ICURN, $5 donation. Let me put a little heart on that. That's awesome. She said, thank you for all you do. Remember, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. MH cancer, AML, we can't cure anxiety. We can medicate it. And that's my argument. We can't cure anxiety. We can't. Those are the professionals, right? Those are the actual psychologists, psychiatrists. That was directly after they went to a conference. We can't cure it. Why not? I guess that's my point here. Why not? We have control over, let's be honest here, the, genetic strains or the DNA strands that we have. We have the ability to modify them, to change them, to update them. Why not? If so many people are being born, I mean, you just saw it's 1 out of 5. If so many people are being born and having these issues now, you would think, since we have an epidemic that is more severe than COVID ever was, that we would try to find a cure. You would think. All righty, everybody. I'm going to catch you a little bit later. Attorney Walter Hnot. Please remember to like and subscribe. Many of you don't hit the like button. I would appreciate if you hit that like button. Just give it a little flick right there. Just a little like button. With that said, if you do enjoy these videos, please head over to Google and type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida. Go ahead and throw some stars up on the law firm page if you could. Also, with that said, I go live on Mondays and Thursdays to answer questions for free about disability law. So if you have disability law questions, I give mini consultations then. And if you want a bigger consultation, there's a 1-hour contract below. We are flirting with the idea of doing the half-an-hour consultations at a reduced price, because normally the 1 hour is like $250, and then like a half an hour would be like $150. We're flirting with that idea because at this point, what's happening is the 1 hours have already taken over most of the 12 noon slots. We've now had to add the 3 p.m. slots from. So we're flirting with that idea to try and like break them up and then move them into different spots of the day between my hearings. Because normally when I have a hearing and then another hearing, normally I'll have less than an hour in between them, and I could always do one in between. With that said, I have also partnered specifically with Chapter. They gave me a cool little URL right here, askchapter.org/disability. Here's the phone number you can call. Give them a call. Let them try it and give a tune-up to your Medicare policy. What they'll do is they'll go in, they'll look at your medications, your impairments, stuff like that, and then they'll find some group that either you have the best one you do or you don't, and they'll work with you to find somebody that would be a good fit for you. And so as a result of that, give them a call. I don't do Medicare. It's not my gig. I am a disability attorney. I will catch you all at the next video in about 10 to 15 minutes. Rock and roll from there, and I will see you soon. Thank you so much, Attorney Walter Hnot. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.